I think almost everyone wants to be perceived as cool. But if I tell you, would you like to be perceived as cool from now on? The answer probably from almost everyone would be yes. Because being cool is something desired, because it gives you admiration. But what does being cool actually mean? And is it even worth trying to be cool? But to answer all of this, we first need to define what being cool means. It is very hard to define cool. That's why I feel we use some words such as aura and vibe to refer to something cool. And this is because cool ranges a lot. Some people might think of celebrities, singers, or someone they know in real life when they're asked to think of someone they consider to be cool. But it also changes with age and gender. For example, I asked my dad to think of someone that is cool, and his answer was Keanu Reeves. Very different from who I immediately would have thought, but I don't exactly disagree. And me as a girl who is way younger than my dad, for example, Anya Taylor-Joy, and because we have different references, this does not mean that someone seen as cool by some people cannot be seen as uncool by others, and vice versa. And I also think that when you're asked to think of someone you consider to be cool, your first thought would probably be someone that has some things in common with you that are possible points of comparison or admiration. That's why my dad thought of Keanu Reeves, a man that's around his age. And I thought of Anya Taylor-Joy, for example, that is a woman that likes fashion and is around my age. So my take is that being yourself is being cool. But at the same time, that does not mean that the people around you would see you as cool. Everyone is going to tell you, be yourself, be authentic, be cool. But I think when you do that, most of the times you feel insecure, you feel like an outsider, you feel like nobody understands you. But that's exactly what's right, because that means you're being different. But nobody talks about that uncomfortable part. When you start being true to who you are, it's uncomfortable at first, so it feels wrong. But it's actually usually the right way. So, because if you're cool really depends on the viewer, it's more about what you show, not what you do privately. And this is not to be performative, because of course, if you are seen as cool by being who you are, well, you are going to do the same privately. But what I mean is, like, since it depends on the viewer, it's what you do publicly. For example, your style. If your style thoughtfully pushes the limits of what's conventional or what's traditional, and that draws attention. To be honest, I hope you take everything here with a grain of salt, even though I am about to reference a study made by actual professionals. This is just what I like to think about and reflect about. So take everything with a grain of salt, because defining cool is out of my hands. So I can only reflect about it based on what I have lived and what I think. So for this reason, I'd like to support my thoughts with a study published by the Journal of Experimental Psychology around the end of 2025. And the title is super nonchalant. The title is Cool People. Just 2 words. So the main objectives of this study were to know which attributes are associated with being cool, to answer if good is considered to be the same or unequal as being cool, like if being a cool person is the same or almost equal to being a good person. And if these attributes that make someone cool remain the same throughout different cultures. Because they state that being cool is an international phenomenon. They even say the phrase, from San Diego to Santiago, Sydney to Seoul, people want to be cool. And of course they need to justify why this matters. So basically it matters because people spend time, effort and money trying to be cool, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And why do people want to be cool? Well, basically because it's admired by others. It gives you a social status. It's considered to be attractive. So this leads to better access to social inclusion, resources, opportunity. Basically, it makes your life easier and you feel happier with who you are. But I also find very interesting its history. It was used for the first time in the Afro-American subcultures in the 60s, and I love to think how it started there in the 60s and it remains today, and it has spread to every country. In fact, there is no actual synonym that equals the word cool, nor translation. Some synonyms that could be used are dope, fire, fab, or fresh, but none of them are exactly the same as cool. And it's interesting because for this study, the researchers, they didn't translate it, the word cool. Like, it didn't matter if the person spoke Korean or Spanish, the word cool remained the same. They did not translate it. It was the same throughout all languages. There were 4,261 participants, so a pretty big number, from different countries including Spain, South Korea, Mexico, United States, China, Germany, and others. Every person answered in their language, but as I said before, the word cool wasn't translated. So finally, for the results of this study, what they found is certain attributes that are associated with being cool. And some of these are being extroverted, hedonism, being powerful, being adventurous, being open and autonomous, being capable, and I'd like to add, this wasn't mentioned in the study, but I also feel like being effortless is also part of being seen as cool. And for being a good person, the attributes associated with being good are being traditional, being a conformist, being safe, but some of the attributes that were also associated with cool were shared with being good, such as being warm, calmed, conscious, and being universalistic. But the study still questioned, why is being cool so admired if it has no true social value? So part of their hypothesis is that due to the prevalence of the attributes of cool in different cultures, the study suggests that being cool might fulfill a social function. They even suggest that being cool might have emerged and eventually expanded as an alternative social hierarchy. And also, part of their hypothesis was that being cool pushes boundaries. By pushing boundaries, most societies can improve and can advance. So, pushing these limits could be something positive for societies, embracing creativity and innovation. And this alternative hierarchy that cool built is relative to certain attributes, such as prestige, respect, admiration, and deference. And this could help incentivize people to contribute to collective goals in a social group, which equals being more valued and seen by the society they live in. So that was a really fast approach to the study and some highlights that I summarized. But if you want to check it out more carefully, I will leave the link for the study in the description. So after reading the study, I still had a lot of questions, of course. In fact, the study did not got to a solid conclusion, and the study was aware of that. But I still have the question, like, how many cool people are there? I don't think it can be possibly answered exactly, but at least we know that there are less cool people than there are normal people. This is clear because they stand out, and it's something desirable because not everyone can achieve. And they stand out because they're usually extroverted, and they are different because they push limits of what's traditional or already established. But I also got to the question, does gender have anything to do with being cool? And I thought on two different scenarios. One, if a woman wears more masculine clothing compared to if a man wears more feminine clothing. Both of them can be cool. And I got to a conclusion, which of course is not the only answer, but I think it has to do with risk and adventure, because feminine traits are often linked to certain adjectives such as being soft, being sensible, being intuitive, and caring, which doesn't really relate to risk or adventure. Two very heavy attributes for being seen as cool. Whereas being masculine is related to other adjectives such as being strong, courageous, stable, active, which are closer to risk. So this suggests that the women wearing masculine clothing would not only be pushing the limits of what's established for her to wear, but she would also be wearing masculine clothing as associated with adjectives that are closer to risk. So she would not only be an hedonist, but also these would relate her to being adventurous, an attribute suggested to being cool in the study. And keep in mind, this is not my opinion. I just like to think about these things and I like to share them to open discussions. So there are multiple other possible reasons and answers, but I find really interesting to think about the connection between style and sociology, and specifically in this case something so desired, which is being cool. So I definitely overthought this. I am a professional overthinker by now, but I couldn't let this thought pass by because I think being cool is something so interesting and something I've been reflecting about a lot. So I wanted to share this thought and this study. So summarize, being cool is not something you entirely decide, but I think that when you stop caring about being cool, you start becoming cool. You start becoming yourself, and you are going to be admired by people because I think that's what everyone wants. Everyone wants to be free. Everyone wants to be themselves without being judged. But that's just impossible, so they admire the people that are themselves despite the possibility of being judged. This is why at the beginning of the video I question if aiming to be cool was even worth it. And I think it could be if you do it from a positive perspective and from a positive motivation, not from hate, not from trying to be someone you're not. If it excites you to challenge your style or to show your style or who you are to the world. So what I can tell you is that regardless of anything, if you are yourself with confidence, you'll be admired by people. Some will show you their admiration and some might not. Some might even hate, probably hating you out of envy. Plus, you'll feel better with yourself in the long term. So I hope you learned something new with this video, or that this encouraged you to do something different, to keep being who you are. So feel free to leave anything in the comments and I'll continue investigating. So I'll probably continue making this type of videos where I kind of share my overthoughts and obsessions about art, style and sociology. So that's it for this video and I thank you for watching.